Get ready for more valuable financial insights from Northern California's premier retirement income planners, Dan Ahmad and Jim Files, owners of Peak Financial Freedom Group. For more information, go to peakfin.com. And now, here's Dan and Jim.
This is Dan Ahmad and Jim Files. You're with the Peak Financial Freedom Hour. Thanks for joining us. And we'd like to thank everyone for listening to us, because we have a ton of our clients that listen to this on the weekends, and they hear our information during the weekdays as well. And we have a ton of people who aren't our clients yet who are just listening to try to make sure they learn enough to make the right decisions about retirement. And that's what we focus on. We don't do anything other than helping people that are retired or getting ready to retire plan to make sure they're avoiding the financial mistakes that could ruin their retirement. And you can go to our website, www.peakfin.com, and listen to our podcast. You can go to YouTube, our YouTube channel, and watch our TV shows that have been recorded, as well as a bunch of educational videos. You also can just go to our website and download a ton of information, including a free copy of our best-selling book, Mama's Secret Recipe for Retirement Success. And that was a bestseller on Amazon. It's no cost. Just enter your data. Boom. They'll send you a link and you'll have it in your inbox. You can download it. So it's a great book to learn about, again, Mama's Secret Recipes for Retirement Success. And we want to make sure anyone who's listening now knows that they can call us at pound 250, say the keyword money. That's pound 250, say the keyword money, and talk to the operators, and they will then find out if we can go ahead and get you scheduled for a free consultation about your retirement. In many cases, you're also going to be eligible to receive a free retirement income plan, an income plan, a tax plan, a legacy plan, a risk plan, a fee plan. All those things are part of it. So make sure if you need the help. And we state that right at the beginning, because we have clients all the time, people that come in here and they say, yeah, I've been listening to your radio show for 5 years and I finally called in. And we're always like, what the heck took you so long? And it wasn't anything negative. It was just that really nothing was in their mind, pressing them into it. But as they got closer and closer to retirement, they found that everything we said is how they felt. And everything we said wasn't what they're doing now. And they knew they needed to make some decisions to fix it. Because if you keep doing the same thing that you're doing now, you're just going to get the same results. And that's okay if you're okay with the same results. But most people feel uncomfortable and worry about their money because they don't want the same results they've been getting. They don't want the losses. They don't want the poor performance. They don't want the lack of income. They don't want the uncertainty. So, Jim, why don't you start the show off with a financial quote of the week that can kind of lead us into the show?
This comes from John F. Kennedy, and I think, most everybody respected him as a president, as a human being. And he says, the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. And it's a simple saying, right? The time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. But people don't know how to repair the roof when it comes to the finances. Could you imagine if you're going to remodel your home and you started in the middle of December when the forecast was going to be raining every day for 30 straight days?
You mean almost like you?
Yeah, right. It wouldn't be very smart, right? It wouldn't be very smart because you're likely going to be in a mess, right? Everything's going to get wet. You're going to be panicked. You're not going to know what to do. You're going to make bad decisions. It's going to cost you more money. But retirement's no different. You have to have a plan in place so that you are preparing your roof when the sun is shining. That means you're preparing your plan. Because how many of you that are listening right now can tell me when the stock market's going to go down? How many of you can tell me that the market's going to go up by 10% or down by 10%? Nobody can. Nobody's smart enough in the world. Nobody has a crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen with the stock market 2 seconds from now, let alone 10 years from now.
I can guarantee something.
Both.
It'll go up and it'll go down.
Yeah, it's going to do both, right? Exactly. But what you have to understand is that in retirement is completely different than not being in retirement. Because when you weren't in retirement, or if you're working right now and you're making contributions to your 401k plan, you're not taking money out of your portfolio. So when the market goes down, yes, it's a bummer. It's no fun to watch your account value goes down, but you kind of can stay in there, right? You can hang in there because you think you're going to get back to even, and you have enough time on your side, and you have a salary coming in order to sustain you during that period of time. But imagine being retired and the market go down for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're pulling money out. It's a different game, Dan, and people just don't get it for some reason. They don't understand the impact of what that will do to not only their psyche, but their finances.
Well, let's do a simple test that we go through with every single client prospect that we're working with. And that is pretend like, let's say you have $2 million of assets right now and you've saved it. You worked your butt off for 35, 40 years and you're really glad you have it. You always think you should have saved more and you made mistakes and everything, but you've done an awesome job because there's very few people in this whole area that have saved more than $2 million.
Yeah.
Very few. I know everyone always thinks everyone saved all these dollars. No, they pretend. They buy the big house, the big car. They have a lot of debt. Those people don't save a lot. The people, our clients, they've been more frugal. They've been savers and they have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million saved because they really haven't wasted money. But pretend like you have $2 million right now. And if you look at it, if you got a 50% gain on the $2 million, you'd be at $3 million and you'd be happier than heck, right? The problem is for most of our clients, it wouldn't significantly affect their lifestyles if that happened. But what if they lose 50% and the $2 million goes down to $1 million? Is that going to have a significant effect negatively on their lifestyle?
100%.
100%. And you ask people, would you be helped more by a 50% gain or hurt more by a 50% loss now at retirement or getting ready to retire? Every single person says they would get hurt more by the 50% loss. And if their assets are positioned where they could lose 50%, it means they better now make modifications to their portfolio to not be in that position because logic, if we lose 50%, you're probably not going to make it.
That's right. And people, again, start making bad mistakes if they're positioned incorrectly when they retire. Could you think you can handle a 40 or 50% drawdown in your portfolio? Drawdown means a loss, right? You did during 2008 and 9, you did during 2001 and 2, but you had less money and you were younger and you had a salary and you had many years in front of you. So if the market went down, you lost less because you had less money, you're younger, and you had all kinds of time in front of you. But imagine, again, you're 60, 65, or 70, and you lose half your money. It's a different game, folks, because you're older, you don't have recovery time, you're likely not working, and you're drawing income off your portfolio at the same time it's going down. Remember, go back to March of this year, March and April. The S&P 500 ended up being down about 19% at one point, the NASDAQ down about 25%. Were you nervous as a consumer? Were you nervous? What did you do? You said to yourself, okay, I'm going to hang in there. And you probably did because it was short-lived. We still had a good economy. The world was in pretty good shape, right? But what if we have a financial disaster, a banking crisis, or we have a major war that disrupts the U.S., or we just have a financial problems and the market goes down not 19, 29, it goes down 30, it goes down 35%, it goes down 40, it goes down 45%. And it takes months or years to go down and go down. What are you going to do?
Well, think about it, though. You named all kinds of bad things that could happen that could crash the market. What if nothing bad happens and the market still goes down significantly, like is what happened over the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Good things happen and the market goes down because we just don't know when it's going to go up and go down.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is we just can't have that much volatility, whether it's up or down in a portfolio, if we're trying to create income off of it.
That's exactly right.
Right?
That's exactly right. And you're planning for retirement. And your retirement is, okay, you save for 40 years in order to go into retirement. Now you're going to go into retirement. You're going to use the money you saved. So you can't afford to have a major drawdown in your portfolio value. That means a loss, and draw income out at the same time. You've got to figure out how to mitigate the risk. You've got to be able to figure out, how do I generate dependable, guaranteed income that won't run out?
Well, if we just have a stock market like what's happened over the last 25 years, which it goes up, it goes down, decent rates of return, big losses. But if we have a stock market like the last 25 years, and if you tried to take income off your assets, and let's just say you had $2 million and you wanted to take out $100,000 and you paid the typical fees people are paying, and you got stock market returns, your money would run out in about 12 years.
Yep.
So let's say you're 60. Do you really want to be penniless at 72? Let's say you're 65, 77. Let's say you're 70, even 82. Do you really want to run out of money at that point? And if the answer is no, which we know it's no, you better make some changes and find out, how do I protect myself against just one big loss happening, even though these types of big losses, 39, 40% average losses every 5 years, even if just one happens, you're probably going to have a high probability of retirement failure.
And we're not saying don't invest money in the stock market. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you need to diversify your asset base so you have many different types of investments that behave differently both in good and bad markets.
Well, actually, what we're really saying is make sure whatever assets you need to create income you don't have in the stock market.
Yeah.
And then do exactly what you're saying there. Be as aggressive as you want with the other assets, because as long as your income's covered, is there anything to worry about?
No, not at all. And that's exactly what you did when you're 30 years old. You had enough income coming in, you could risk the assets in the market. And we're just advocating the same thing, but we're showing you how to do that without you having your own paycheck. We're going to make a paycheck for you by using a different income stream.
You just said something cool. So talk about that, because basically I never thought about that, but it actually has opened my eyes listening to you. So when they're working, they made their salary and then they can invest the money as aggressive as they want.
Right.
Well, now at retirement, if we can create their salary through the guaranteed income, then they can invest the money the same way. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's the same exact strategy. It's just that you're now older and you don't have a paycheck. So we have to develop the paycheck for you. We have to show you how to provide yourself guaranteed income so you can take risk in the stock market. It's pretty simple when we show them, Dan. It's really simple.
Well, if they do not replace their paychecks, you're not going to have any playchecks.
Mm-hmm.
And your paychecks are what provide you the playchecks so you can do the things you want. You know, we have clients that will spend $15,000 a year on travel. We have clients that will spend $80,000 a year on travel. Well, each person gets to decide that. And then we have to find out, can we create enough income that will allow them to hit those goals? Because that's what they want to do a lot of times. They want to travel, do the things they couldn't do when they were working so hard. And it comes down to then creating those paychecks. You're back with Dan Ahmed, Jim Files, the Peak Financial Freedom Hour. And we were talking today about really the need for a plan and the need to avoid significant losses if you're retired or within 5 years of retirement. Because every single person listening knows it doesn't matter what your advisor tells you, doesn't matter what the internet says, doesn't matter what your 401k company says. You know, if you're retired or getting ready to retire and you suffer big loss, what's the chance you're going to have a successful retirement? Well, you might have a successful retirement if from this point forward you get really lucky, but your probability significantly drops if you suffer a big loss in retirement or the 5 years prior to retirement. So we talked about that. Last show, we also talked about if you can generate enough income from your assets, what would it do for your life? So let's look at a couple examples again. We covered this last show, but I like to talk about it again. So we've found that people that have saved $1 million or more, they've saved a lot more than other people. And then everyone wants to kind of know what's the magic number. And there really isn't a true magic number, because every income plan has to be based on your budget and what you need. But let's say you had $1.5 million of assets, no pension at all, and you're only getting Social Security. Well, that's kind of scary, because 1.5 million doesn't sound like a huge amount of money, even though it is if you don't have a pension. So we have 60,000 of Social Security, you have $1.5 million of assets. What if, which we can in most cases, what if we can create $100,000 of income on top of the Social Security from the assets? Now we have $160,000 of gross income for the year. And what if now we can net more than $10,000 a month after taxes? How would that feel for that client?
Well, it will change your life. And I know it's hard for you to imagine that when we're just talking here on the radio. And it's really difficult to kind of put these numbers in your head and kind of just say to yourself, okay, I kind of get that. In order to make sure you do get it, you have to have a plan in place, because in a plan that we put together, it shows you in a very delineated fashion exactly where your income is going to come from by income source. And it's not just taking 4% off your portfolio. That doesn't work, folks. That's not what we're talking about. You can take 4% off your portfolio as long as you want to take it off your portfolio. But when the market goes down, you're taking 4% off and it continues to go down. It's going to cause havoc in your life. You're going to be concerned about that. So what you need to do is to make sure. I just finished a plan, and my client had 12 different income sources, right? They had a Roth, they had 2 IRAs, they had a trust account, they had 3 non-trust accounts, they had Social Security for the husband and wife, they had a small pension, and they had some rental income. They had 12 sources of income. They had all kinds of income sources, but they didn't know how to put this all together. Now, you probably don't have a complicated plan like that, but what I'm saying is that even with sophisticated people having a number of income sources, they had no idea where to start, Dan. They didn't know where to, they had no idea what to do.
No. And, everyone looks at their situation, of course, personally, emotionally. I had people come in and the gentleman, an engineer guy, had done a lot of the planning on his own. And I looked at their budget, and their budget was like $10,050 a month. And I looked at everything, and it was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the income sources coming in, and he had $10,050 a month of gross income.
Yeah.
So somehow it was exactly the same.
Yeah.
The problem was the $10,050 was gross before taxes, for one thing. So it actually was less than that. And then I asked him, I said, why did you create just that amount? He goes, because that's what we need each month. I'm like, okay, so you wouldn't want to raise? He goes, we don't need more income. I'm like, oh, you don't need more income, really? I said, so when you were 50, if I'd have came to you and said, you know what, Bob, you're doing such a great job. You're making $150,000 a year. I think you're doing such a good job. I'm going to give you a $50,000 raise. I'm going to raise your income to $200,000 a year. Would you ever have told me, Dan, I don't want the raise because I'll just wait and use it later and I don't want to pay taxes on it? Or would you take the raise?
Of course you'd
take the raise.
Of
but
course.
People have this blinder and they have a completely different view of how they see their income because they're afraid it's going to run out if they take too much. They're afraid they're going to get killed with taxes. So we have to put a plan together. In this case, I put a plan together that right now they're actually netting about $8,500 after taxes to pay their $10,050 budget. I put a plan together that gave them $15,000 in net income per month.
Yep.
They have $15,000 in net after-tax income per month, and their budget's $10,000. What does that do then in their lives? How do they feel now?
They feel wonderful. If you go back to March and April this year, and as we talk on our show, we talk about buckets, right? We put money into buckets. Bucket number one is money in cash. It's in savings. It's in high yield savings. It's in CDs, right? You're going to manage that. We'll direct you on where to go to get the highest rates of return, but you're going to manage that bucket, right? Bucket number two is the money in the market. You're going to likely have money in the market. We're going to use different strategies than you would probably use. We're using a mechanical system that uses algorithms. And as an example, in March of this year, our average client probably had anywhere from 10 to 30% maximum exposure in equities. And then finally, around, when the market was dropping in late March, we stopped out of the market completely. We went to cash type instruments, treasury bonds, securities that were not in the market in cash. And the market continued to fall, and it fell and it fell. But our clients weren't worried about that because they were on the sidelines. And the third bucket is the guaranteed bucket. We have money with the majority of our clients in the guaranteed bucket, whereby when the market drops, they cannot lose a penny and their income is guaranteed. So going back to March and April this year, if you just had money in the market, I guarantee you were panicked. You were emotional. You were saying to yourself, what if this market doesn't stop dropping? But what if you had very little money in the market at that point and your income was secure? Would you have worried about it? No. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have very little money now. We're going back into the market, but we're using strategies and techniques here to try to preserve the assets. We can't stop you from losing money in the stock market. That's impossible, but we can help control the losses and make sure you're diversified correctly and to make sure that when we have something happen like we did in March and April, that something bad doesn't happen to your portfolio.
Well, and the whole goal is just to blend the buckets or blend the assets so that together all the assets don't have more than 5% total risk in the portfolio, meaning the money in the bank can never lose any money. The money in the guaranteed accounts cannot lose any money if the stock market crashes. The money in the market can lose money, but using the stop losses, we can mitigate that risk. And by using a cash bucket, by using a guaranteed income bucket, by using a stock market managed portfolio for risk mitigation, we can then project the risk at 5% or lower, even if the stock market crashes 50%. You're back with Dan Ahmed, Jim Files, the Peak Financial Freedom Hour. Thanks for staying with us for this show. We talked about a bunch of really interesting information to start, and now we're going to cover some things that we talk about for clients because so many people are confused, and they're confused about their money. They're confused about what they're told about their money. They're confused about their plan, and they really aren't confused about their plan. Is that they don't have a plan. You've been talked into the incorrect data that your statements or your IRA or your 401k is your plan. Those aren't that. Those are just your assets. Your plan would be something that will now tell you what you're doing with your money and why you're doing it with your money and when you're going to get your income, how much tax you're going to pay, all in a written plan. So people are very confused because they're told so many different things. So let's look at some things that we think are very important. Let's say you talk about a diversified portfolio, and let's cover several topics with diversification. we think so many diversified portfolios of mutual funds or exchange traded funds or index funds are simply ticking time bombs, just waiting to detonate during the next big stock market drop. You've been told, oh, don't worry, you have diversification, so the mutual funds have less risk than your stocks do. Well, individual stocks are usually what these mutual funds are purchasing, so you don't have necessarily any less risk. Again, just think back, Jim, to 2008, when you probably owned what your advisor called or what you thought was a diversified portfolio of funds. And think back, it was diversified, but how much did you lose? 30%, 40%, 50%. So was it diversified?
Well, it was diversified based on their definition, but we don't believe it was diversified at all because those assets behave differently, the same. Go back to 2022, which just 3 years ago. At the end of the year, the S&P 500 was down 20%. Guess what? The NASDAQ was down 35%. Guess what? Bonds were down 20 to 25%. The 30-year Treasury bond was down 37%. Investment-grade corporate bonds were down 19.56%. So how did those assets behave? They all behaved similarly. They all dropped at the same time. Now, thank God the market came back, but it doesn't mean it's going to come back in that same fashion in the future. So you have to lay out a portfolio where your assets are really diversified. The behavior is different, and that's what we're doing, Dan. We're making sure the behavior, both in good markets and bad markets, are significantly different with how we divide the money up into three buckets.
Exactly. Well, how about this one? People told, well, you're diversified because you have this beautiful pie chart and it has 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 different mutual funds in it. And I've seen people that have had 200 different funds in their portfolio for diversification, and it really didn't give them any more diversification. It actually basically increased overlaps, and it increased potential fees. So we got lower rates of return, potentially paid more fees, and we really didn't have that much risk, because I did an analysis for something like that. And if we went through another 08 financial crisis, they would have lost over 48% if we go through another 08 financial crisis. So if you're almost at a 50% loss, that's what the stock market did in 2001 and 2. I think the S&P dropped something like 54%. 2007, 8, 9, it dropped 53%. So if you can lose as much as the stock market, even though the stock market is also diversified, it didn't do anything to provide the risk reduction or risk mitigation that you've been promised that diversification would provide.
Yeah, but again, and we harp on this every single week, and we harp and we harp and we harp, is that you don't understand what the level of risk you have in your portfolio, and you have no idea what that's going to do to you once that happens. If you're in retirement or getting close to retirement, it will be devastating. And we haven't had a 2007, 8, 9 for a long time, right? It's been a long, long time. We haven't had a tech bubble for a long time. But you have to ask yourself, do you think there's any risk in the world right now where that could happen? You think these wars that we've entered into or that we're part of, whether it's in Ukraine or whether it's, in the eastern part of the world,
or trade wars.
I mean, do you think this administration, whether you like it or don't like it, doesn't really matter? Do you think that could cause problems? Do you think we could have another pandemic? Do you think we could have other issues? I mean, there's so many things that could cause the stock market to go down. It's going to go down. It's going to go up. You just have to protect yourself. It's real simple. And protecting yourself isn't calling your advisor and having your advisor saying you're going to be fine. You got $1.5 million, you'll be fine. You have $2 million, you're just going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It makes you feel good maybe with that conversation, but that's not good enough. You better have this stuff in writing so you understand it, you comprehend it, so that you can make a decision before something happens.
When someone calls their advisor and says, I'm worried about the market, I'm worried about the world, I'm worrying about the risk, etc., and let's say that client had a portfolio that was 80% stock funds and 20% bond funds, and they don't know how much risk they have. When they ask the advisor says, oh, you're just moderate, don't worry, you don't have that much risk. But in reality, if we have an 08 financial crisis, that person better be prepared to probably lose up to 45%,
probably,
based on the analysis that we do, right? Mm-hmm. We find that. If they're then adamant, because advisors say, oh, no, don't worry, you don't have to make any modifications, you're fine, you'll come back, the market will always do well. Well, the issue will be then the client leaves it, and then they're taking that 45% risk. If the client's really adamant, maybe the advisor gives in and says, okay, I'll reduce your equity holdings to 70% and bonds to 30%. Or if they really think they're going ultra conservative, the advisor will say, okay, I'm going to put you in the typical retirement portfolio, 60% bonds, 60% stock funds, 40% bond funds.
Yep.
In that case, then the advisor says you have so much less risk. If the client had that type of portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bond funds, and we go through another 2008 market, what better they be prepared to lose?
38.53% of your money. 38.53.
How do you know that number?
Because we talk about it all the time. And it's research. It's all the research we gather, right? It's 38.53. That's a balanced portfolio, whether it's Vanguard or Fidelity, both great companies. Had nothing to do with the companies. It has to do with the portfolio. That's how much you have to be prepared to lose. So if you're going to lose 35 to 40% of your money, is that concerning? And it should be concerning, but you can solve the problem now. They can't.
Well, and I think that's the goal, solving the problem, because solving the problems decreases the worries. Solving the problems decreases the worries and then increases the chance your plan is going to work successfully during retirement, which then allows you to have the wonderful retirement you planned versus a worrisome retirement. You're back with Dan Allman and Jim Files, the Peak Financial Freedom Hour, and we are talking about right now, this section, things that people are confused about, especially when you're told these statements from your advisor, who may have been an advisor for decades, or your 401k company that you've had for decades, or family, friends, etc. One of the things you're told, even now, if you're retired or getting ready to retire, that even if the market goes down, it starts to have big losses, you're told to hang in there, ride it out. You're in it for the long run. Don't worry, the stock market will always recover, and you'll make big gains. And we feel that statement is exactly what you should do before retirement. So if you're more than 5 years away from retirement, it's okay to follow those guidelines, because those guidelines were made for people who weren't in retirement, and those guidelines were made for people who weren't within 5 years of retirement. Because the stock market, we feel, Jim and I feel, will always rebound if you're not, and your portfolio will rebound if you're not taking income out of it. If we need to use your assets for income, which we're going to at retirement, you have to make sure you don't have any major volatility in there. Otherwise, we cannot take that amount out. So give you an example. If you're 40 and the stock market crashes 50% like it did in 08, then by 2013, 2014, if you just left the money there, it would have rebounded. The stock market rebounded if you were in the S&P 500. Same thing if you're retired in 2008, the market goes down 53%. You're taking 5% of your money out. You're probably going to run out of money in 8 to 9 years, Jim.
Yep. And people don't understand this math because they've never really laid out the math. If you come in here, we'll show you. We'll show you if you retire. Let's say you're 60 and live until 84. That's kind of life expectancy. Hate to say it that way, but that's just the facts. That means 24 years in retirement. We'll take the S&P 500 for the last 24 years as if you retired at 60 24 years ago, and we'll show you exactly what would have happened if you're taking out your income, you're paying your fees, and you're going through both good and bad markets. You're going to run out of money between 12 and 15 years, depending on how much money you're taking out. You're going to run out of money. And even though you say to yourself, that's impossible, it's not. It worked. It's just a math. Now, if you weren't running out of money, your portfolio would have grown dramatically over that period of time, because the ups and downs, you wouldn't have taken any money out. There would have been no issue, but you're taking money out at the time the market's going down and up. And when the market's going down, if you drop 10% and you take 5% out in income, you lost 15%, right? And now you need about a 22% rate of return to get back to even.
Well, think about it. If you started in 2000 and went for 25 years to the end of 2024 and didn't take any money out of the stock market, right, and you put $1 million in, your $1 million would have grown by the end of 2024 to over $4 million in the stock market, with huge volatility, but it would have quadrupled. If you would have started in 2000 and went through 2024 to do the calculations, you started with $1 million and then wanted to take out $50,000 of income per year, paid 1% advisory fees and other fees that you don't even see, your money would have run out in 12 years. So how in the heck, if during the exact same time period, $1 million would have grown to $4 million and you succeeded dramatically versus $1 million went down to zero? It's because you were taking income off the asset. So you cannot look at your assets the same way. You have to look at your assets that you're going to be touching them. You're going to be using them. So how in the heck can you take risk in those assets?
You have to have this stuff in writing. We keep on harping on this. You got to get it in writing. You have to understand the math behind this. You have to really come together and realize, what could happen. and how do you prepare so it won't happen? And you can do that. We can, get to see the future. When it comes to math and science, it's just data, right? We're going to introduce you to data here. It's going to be data for your portfolio so that we can structure this to make sure that you don't make a financial mistake, because a financial mistake at this point in your life, if you're getting ready to retire or you're in your retirement, can be devastating. And markets, we haven't seen big drawdowns or long periods of drawdowns in markets for a long time, where the market goes down for a long, long time. 2022, it did it for 13 months, but we haven't seen a prolonged drawdown for a long period, and we're way overdue for that.
No.
This way overdue for it.
Well, and you have to look at when you're told when you're younger to hang in there, write it out. One of the big benefits everyone always tells you about writing out these large losses is that you're going to continue to invest and buy more mutual fund shares or more stock shares at lower prices, dollar cost averaging. So it makes 100% sense mathematically. The problem is at retirement, you no longer are contributing to your 401k, your 457, or your 403b, typically not necessarily investing the same amount each month into your brokerage accounts. So you don't have the benefit of now buying. And let's say you're not investing and you have a $2 million portfolio and the portfolio goes down to $1 million. Well, at that point, the $1 million is still invested, but you have to now grow it back to $2 million just to get back to even again. So we lose that benefit of the dollar cost averaging again, because time is not on our side. If time's not on our side, it's hurting us.
I read an interesting article about 6 months ago, and it said, rich people do not like the stock market. Think about that. Rich people do not like the stock market because it's unpredictable. It's not dependable. And if they've earned this money, they finally got to a point where, even if you're not rich, what do you have enough money to retire? You have $1 million, $1.5 million, maybe you have $2 million. In your mind, that's all you have. And if rich people are saying that they don't like the stock market because it's not dependable, what should you be thinking about? You should be thinking about, how do I make my retirement dependable? What do I have to do to structure my portfolio so that I can get through the retirement? Now, don't get me wrong. We like the stock market. Our clients have money in the stock market. We have lots of money that we oversee, but that's not all their money. We're not about to put all their money in the stock market. That'd be craziness, right? We have to develop a plan where they do have money in the market, enough whereby it's going to accomplish what we're trying to do, but they won't lose a lot of money based on the strategies we're using. But we have other asset classes and other income sources so that when the market does go down, it's going to go down, it's going to go up. The client's not going to panic.
Well, the key ultimately is you're listening. You get a lot of advice out there from your current broker, from other people on the radio. They say, put the money in the market. Everything will be fine. Well, guess what? Everything will be fine if the stock market goes straight up for the next 30 years. Yeah. It will. You don't have to worry. But what's the chance the stock market's going to go straight up and we're not going to have volatility? I think it's zero. I think we're going to have tremendous volatility. So you can't invest in a way where luck is going to play any part in your future success during retirement. You just have to make sure things are in writing and you get the guarantees in place.